Wembley Stadium, London, July 16, 1988. The night air hummed with electricity as 50,000 souls packed into the massive arena. Bodies pressed together in a sea of humanity that stretched as far as the eye could see. The Bad World Tour had already become the stuff of legend across 3 continents. But there was something special about London. Something that Michael always felt in his bones the moment he stepped onto English soil. Perhaps it was the history, the weight of a musical legacy that had shaped his own journey, or perhaps it was simply the unrestrained passion of British fans who gave everything of themselves in a way that still, after all these years, could bring tears to his eyes. The stadium had been pulsing with anticipation for nearly an hour, the crowd growing more frenzied with each passing minute. The energy was building like a physical force, a wall of emotion that could be felt backstage where Michael stood in quiet contemplation, head bowed, eyes closed, already somewhere else, somewhere beyond the noise and chaos. His slender frame was draped in a gold and black military-style jacket adorned with badges and medals, the outfit that would become one of the most iconic images of the tour. His team moved around him in practice motions, a well-oiled machine after months on the road, but no one spoke to him directly. They knew better. These final moments belonged to Michael alone, this strange liminal space between being a man and becoming something else entirely. The lights in the stadium suddenly cut to black, plunging 50,000 people into darkness. The roar that followed was primal, deafening, a sound that seemed to contain all human emotion compressed into a single moment. And then silence. A silence so complete, so unexpected, that it seemed to have a weight of its own, pressing down on the crowd, heightening the anticipation to an almost unbearable degree. The silence held for 10 long seconds, 10 seconds of collective breath held, 10 seconds of hearts pounding in perfect synchronicity. And then, a single spotlight pierced the darkness, finding the center of the massive stage. Empty. The opening notes of "Wanna Be Startin' Something" began to pulse through the stadium, the familiar rhythm instantly recognized, sending a fresh wave of screams across the crowd. And still, the stage remained empty. The music built, layer upon layer, the tension mounting until it seemed the very air might shatter from the pressure of expectation. And then, as if manifested from the collective desire of 50,000 hearts, he appeared. Rising slowly from beneath the stage, a solitary figure, motionless, head bowed, one gloved hand raised to the heavens. The eruption that followed wasn't merely sound. It was a physical force, a tsunami of adoration crashing against the stage. Michael remained perfectly still for 7 eternal seconds, absorbing the energy, transforming it within himself, becoming both vessel and conduit for something greater than any one person could contain. And then, as if possessed, he began to move. What followed was transcendence. For 2 hours, Michael Jackson wasn't merely performing. He was rewriting the very language of what a human body could express. Each movement was precision incarnate, each note delivered with such raw emotion that people in the crowd found themselves weeping without understanding why. He took them through Thriller with theatrical perfection, through Beat It with controlled fury, through Billie Jean with a dance break that stretched beyond anything seen before, his body becoming liquid light beneath the moon-pale spotlight. The crowd moved as one organism, connected to him by invisible threads of music and memory and meaning. And now, as the final notes of Bad faded into the night, something shifted in the atmosphere. Michael stood at the edge of the stage, breathing heavily, sweat glistening on his face, transformation complete. He had given everything, emptied himself entirely into the performance, and still they wanted more. The crowd began to chant, softly at first, then with growing intensity. "We love you, Michael. We love you, Michael." The sound swelled, 50,000 voices becoming one voice, 50,000 hearts beating as one heart. "We love you, Michael. We love you, Michael." The chant grew louder, more insistent, filling the stadium, filling the night sky, perhaps filling the entire city of London itself. Michael stood motionless, listening, his expression hidden in the shadows as the stage lights dimmed. The band waited, uncertain, the carefully choreographed show suddenly veering into unplanned territory. This wasn't in the set list. This wasn't part of the production. This was something else entirely, something raw and unfiltered, a moment of genuine connection between artist and audience that transcended the commercial transaction of entertainment. For nearly 3 minutes, the chant continued unabated, growing stronger rather than weaker with each repetition. "We love you, Michael. We love you, Michael." Security personnel exchanged nervous glances. The tour manager spoke urgently into his headset, trying to determine how to proceed. The production director hovered near the sound booth, finger poised over buttons that would start the next sequence. But Michael remained still, absorbing the moment, allowing it to exist in its own space and time. And then, slowly, he raised his hands, palms outward, asking for quiet. The chant began to fade, replaced by anticipatory silence. 50,000 people holding their breath once more, waiting to see what would happen next. What Michael did in that moment would be remembered and recounted for decades by those who witnessed it. He stepped back from the edge of the stage, whispered something to a stagehand who nodded and disappeared quickly into the wings. The crowd waited, confused but trusting, the bond between them and their idol unbreakable after the communion they had just shared through music. If this story moves you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more extraordinary moments from Michael's life that show the man behind the legend, the heart behind the icon. The stagehand returned moments later, carrying something small that glinted under the stage lights. Michael's iconic crystal-encrusted glove. But rather than putting it on, Michael took it and walked to the very center of the massive stage. The spotlights followed him, creating a pool of light in which he stood alone, a solitary figure dwarfed by the enormity of the stadium around him. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, intimate, somehow reaching every corner of the vast space without seeming to be amplified at all. "I've worn this glove in concerts across the world," he said, the words floating out over the hushed crowd. "It's become a symbol of who I am, of what I do. But tonight, I want to give it to you, because what you've given me is so much more valuable than anything I could ever create." A murmur ran through the crowd, a collective intake of breath as they realized what was happening. Michael continued, his voice growing more emotional with each word. "The love in this stadium tonight is the most beautiful thing I've ever felt. When you chanted those words, His voice broke slightly, and he paused, composing himself. "I want you to know that I love you too. All of you. Each and every one of you." He held the glove up, letting it catch the light, sending prismatic reflections dancing across the stadium. "This belongs to you now. This belongs to London." What happened next was entirely unplanned, entirely unexpected, and entirely magical. Michael closed his eyes, drew in a deep breath, and began to sing. Not one of his hits, not something from a carefully constructed set list, but something new, something created in that very moment. A cappella, without musical accompaniment, without rehearsal, without anything but the raw emotion of the moment to guide him. The song was simple, a melody that seemed to have always existed, words that spoke of connection, of finding home in the hearts of others, of the healing power of being truly seen and truly loved. The stadium remained in perfect silence as his voice soared into the night. 50,000 people scarcely daring to breathe, lest they break the spell being woven around them. When he finished the impromptu song, there was a moment of absolute stillness, as if time itself had been suspended. And then the applause began. Not wild screaming, not frenzied cheering, but something deeper, more profound, the sound of 50,000 pairs of hands coming together in perfect appreciation of what they had just witnessed. Many were openly weeping. Strangers embraced one another, united by the experience they had shared. In the front row, a young woman collapsed to her knees, overcome with emotion, supported by those around her who understood exactly what she was feeling. Michael looked out over the crowd, tears streaming down his own face now. Unashamed, unguarded, the carefully constructed persona set aside to reveal the human being beneath. He bowed deeply, reverently, honoring them as they had honored him. And then, with a gesture that would be described in newspapers around the world the following day, he gently placed the crystal glove into a small velvet bag, handed it to his security director, and whispered instructions. The security director nodded, understanding the importance of what he was being asked to do, and made his way to the edge of the stage where he carefully scanned the front rows of the audience. After a moment's consideration, he approached a teenage girl in a wheelchair, her face streaked with tears, her hands trembling with emotion. She had been positioned at the very front, accommodated by the venue staff to ensure she could see her idol despite her disability. The security director leaned down, spoke softly to her, and placed the velvet bag in her hands. The girl's expression transformed from confusion to disbelief to ecstatic joy as she realized what she was being given. The crowd around her realized, too, a ripple of understanding spreading outward, and a new chant began, this one even more emotional than the last. "Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael." Michael stood center stage, arms outstretched, accepting their gratitude with humility, redirecting it back to them with every gesture, every expression. The perfect circle of giving and receiving, of artist and audience in perfect harmony, of humanity recognizing itself across all barriers of celebrity and circumstance. The tour director, recognizing the unique power of what was unfolding, made a quick decision. The planned encore was scrapped. Nothing could follow this moment. Nothing should follow this moment. Instead, the house lights slowly began to rise, not abruptly ending the experience, but gently transitioning the 50,000 people back to the ordinary world they would have to re-enter. Michael remained on stage until the very end, watching as the crowd gradually dispersed, many looking back over their shoulders for one last glimpse of him, one last connection before stepping back into their everyday lives. When the stadium had emptied to just a few hundred stragglers, he finally turned and walked slowly off stage, exhausted but filled with a sense of peace that had eluded him for years. His personal assistant later recalled that he said nothing on the journey back to the hotel, sitting in silence in the limousine, looking out at the London streets with an expression of profound contentment. If you've been moved by this story of connection and giving, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue to share these beautiful, human moments from Michael's extraordinary life. 30 years later, the crystal glove still sits in a special display case in the home of Sarah Jenkins, the girl in the wheelchair who became the keeper of not just a piece of memorabilia, but of a moment when 50,000 people and one singular artist created something transcendent together. Now in her late 40s, Sarah often shows the glove to visitors, but always tells them the same thing. The glove isn't the treasure. The real treasure was being part of that moment, being seen by him, being chosen to hold this memory for all of us who were there. When I look at it, I don't see rhinestones and fabric. I see 50,000 faces turned toward the stage. I hear 50,000 voices saying, "We love you." And I remember how it felt when he sang just for us, something that had never been sung before and would never be sung again. The glove catches the light in her living room, throwing tiny rainbows across the walls, across her face, across the decades separating that night from this day. In its facets, a moment of perfect human connection remains alive, undiminished by time, a testament to the beautiful thing that happened when 50,000 fans shouted, "We love you, Michael," and Michael Jackson loved them back.